The crystal moon of Velthara looked like a giant diamond floating in space. Sergeant Daeho Kim watched it through his helmet screen as their small ship got closer. The moon's surface was covered in sharp crystal formations that caught the light from 3 different suns. "Looks peaceful from up here," said Corporal Jiwon Park, checking her translation device. "Hard to believe there's a war going on." Daeho nodded, but kept his eyes on the target. Intelligence had spotted strange energy readings from this moon. Command wanted to know what the Velthani aliens were hiding here. The Velthani had been fighting humans for 2 years now, ever since first contact went wrong. Their ship landed behind a crystal ridge. Daeho led his team of 6 soldiers across the sharp terrain. Each step made small crystal pieces crunch under their boots. The gravity was lighter here, making them bounce slightly with each movement. "There," pointed Private Gitai Seo. "Some kind of building." Through the crystal formations, they could see a dark structure made of black metal. It looked wrong against the bright natural crystals around it. Red lights blinked on its walls. "Scans show it's a prison," said Jiwon, reading her device. "Energy barriers, holding cells, the works." Daeho felt uneasy. What would they need a prison for out here? They moved closer, staying hidden behind the crystal rocks. The building had no guards outside, which seemed strange. Most Velthani military sites were heavily protected. "I'm reading life signs inside," whispered Corporal Min Soo-jo, their tech specialist. "But just a few, maybe 3 or 4 beings." They found a side entrance. The door was partly broken, hanging open. Inside, the halls were dark except for those red emergency lights. The air felt cold and dead. Daeho led them deeper into the building. Their footsteps echoed in the empty corridors. Most of the cells they passed were empty, their energy barriers turned off. But at the end of the main hall, one cell still glowed with active containment fields. "Holy stars," whispered Jiwon. Inside the cell sat the largest Velthani any of them had ever seen. Her body was covered in what looked like purple crystal armor, but it was cracked and dull. Where other Velthani they had fought were green or brown, this one had been violet once. Now she looked gray and tired. The creature looked up at them with large, many-sided eyes. She was clearly female, though much bigger than the male Velthani soldiers they usually fought. When she moved, they could see golden markings on her crystal shell that looked like writing. "She's royalty," said Jiwon, reading her translator as it picked up the alien's movements. "Those markings mean high rank. Very high." The alien spoke in her own language. It sounded like wind chimes mixed with clicking sounds. Jiwon's device worked hard to translate. She says she is Queen Naravel of the Velthani homeworld." Daeho stared. "A queen? Here in this forgotten prison?" The queen tried to stand, but the energy shackles around her arms and legs kept her down. She spoke again, longer this time. Her voice sounded sad and desperate. "She's been here for 3 cycles. That's about 3 years in human time," Jiwon translated. "She says the military faction took over her planet. They imprisoned her here and took her daughter." "Her daughter?" Daeho asked. The queen's eyes seemed to focus on him when Jiwon translated his words. She spoke again, and this time they could hear real pain in her voice. "Princess Kiravel, the queen's only child. She was taken during the coup that removed the queen from power." Jiwon paused, listening to more alien words. "The queen thinks her daughter is dead." But when the queen said her daughter's name, something changed in her eyes. Even through the alien features, Daeho could see hope. Desperate, painful hope. That maybe her child was still alive somewhere. "Why would they keep the queen alive?" asked Gitae. "Leverage, maybe," suggested Min-soo. "Or they're afraid to kill royalty." The queen spoke again. This time she managed a few words in broken human language. "Please," she said slowly. "My daughter. Help. Find." Daeho looked at his team. They had come here for intelligence gathering, not prisoner rescue, especially not alien prisoner rescue. Command would not be happy. But looking at this broken queen, sitting alone in a forgotten prison, begging for help to find her child, Daeho felt something humans were known for throughout the galaxy. Compassion. Sarge, said Jiwon quietly. "We can't leave her here. Look at this place. It's falling apart. The power systems are failing. She'll die here." "She's the enemy," Minsu pointed out. "She's a mother looking for her child," Daeho replied. He studied the queen again. Her crystal shell was cracked in several places. Some cracks looked fresh, like from recent injuries, but others looked older, more deliberate. When he asked Jiwon to translate a question about them, the queen's answer made them all go quiet. "She did those to herself," Jiwon said softly. "It's a Velthani grief ritual. When they think they've lost a child, they mark themselves. The deeper the cuts, the greater the loss they feel." The queen had cut herself deeply. Daeho made his decision. "Minsu, can you shut down these energy barriers?" "Probably, but Sarge, do it." "We're really doing this?" asked Gite. "We're doing this," Daeho confirmed. As Minsu worked on the controls, the queen watched them with those large, hopeful eyes. When the energy barriers finally disappeared, she rubbed her wrists where the shackles had been. "Thank you," she said in her broken human language. "Thank you for kindness." She stood slowly, much taller than any of them. Even weak and injured, she was impressive. But when she looked at Daeho, he didn't see an alien enemy. He saw a mother who had lost everything, clinging to the smallest hope that her child might still be alive. "We'll help you," he told her, knowing Jiwon would translate. "We'll help you find your daughter." The queen's shell seemed to brighten slightly at those words. For the first time in 3 years, someone had given her hope. As they prepared to leave the prison, Daeho wondered what he had gotten his team into. But when he looked back at the empty cell where the queen had been abandoned to die, he knew they had done the right thing. Sometimes being human meant choosing compassion over orders. Captain Sungmin Lee was not happy. His face was red with anger as he stared at the alien queen sitting in their ship's medical bay. "The Taeguk Rising was a military vessel, not a refugee transport. You brought an enemy alien aboard my ship without permission," he said to Daeho. "Do you understand what this means?" "Sir, she was dying in that prison," Daeho replied calmly. "We couldn't leave her there. She's Velthani royalty, the same species that's been killing our people for 2 years. Captain Lee pointed at Queen Naravel, who sat quietly on the medical table. "Command will call this treason." Intelligence Officer Hye-Jin Choi stepped forward. She had been studying the Queen since they brought her aboard. "Actually, Captain, this might be exactly what we need." Everyone turned to look at her. Hye-Jin had a reputation for being smart and careful with her words. "I've been checking our intelligence files," she continued. "Before the war started, we were in peace talks with the Velthani. But then their government changed suddenly. A military coup threw out the old leaders." She activated a wall screen showing alien text and pictures. Queen Naravel was the leader of the peace faction. She wanted to work with humans, not fight us. The military faction that took over started this war. Captain Lee looked interested now. "Go on." If she's still alive, she might know things about Velthani military positions, ship locations, defense, systems, information that could end this war. Daeho felt relieved. Maybe bringing the Queen aboard hadn't been such a bad idea after all. Medical Officer Tae-Young-han finished examining the Queen. "She's malnourished and dehydrated," he reported. "Some of these shell cracks are infected. But she'll live. Through." Jiwon's translator, they asked the Queen about her knowledge of Velthani military secrets, but Queen Naravel shook her large head. "No," she said in broken human language. "First, daughter. Must know what happened to daughter." The Queen's shell had dulled again. When she spoke about her daughter, her voice became very quiet and sad. "Princess Kiravel," Jiwon translated as the Queen spoke in her own language. "The Queen's only child. She was 23 cycles old when taken. That's about the same as a 16-year-old human." The Queen continued speaking, her voice getting stronger as she talked about her daughter. "The princess loved music," Jiwon translated, "especially human music from the radio broadcasts before the war. She learned your language by listening to human songs and news reports." Captain Lee looked surprised. "A Velthani who liked human culture?" "The princess believed humans and Velthani could be friends," the Queen said through Jiwon. "She studied human art, music, stories. She wanted to be an ambassador for peace between our peoples." The queen's shell brightened slightly as she remembered happy times. But then she grew sad again. During the coup, soldiers came to take the queen to prison. Jiwon continued translating. The princess tried to protect her mother. The last thing the queen saw was soldiers dragging Princess Kiravel away. Tae-young pointed to the deliberate cuts in the queen's shell. Those grief marks are deep. She really believes her daughter is dead. But Dae-ho noticed something. When the queen talked about her daughter being taken, not killed, her eyes showed a tiny spark of hope. Maybe deep down, she still believed the princess might be alive. "Your Majesty," Dae-ho said, waiting for Jiwon to translate. "What if your daughter is still alive? What if we could find her?" The queen looked at him with those large, many-sided eyes. She spoke quickly in her own language. "She says that, if her daughter lives, she would do anything to help the people who brought them back together," Jiwon translated, "including sharing military secrets that could end the war." Intelligence Officer Hae-jin smiled. "That's exactly what we need." "But how do we find one alien princess in a galaxy full of war?" asked Captain Lee. The queen spoke again, longer this time. As she talked, her voice became more hopeful. "The princess has unique markings," Jiwon translated. "Her shell is iridescent, like oil on water. It changes colors in the light. Very rare among Velthani. And she has a mark on her forehead that shows royal blood." The queen drew shapes in the air, showing them what the mark looked like. "If she's alive, someone will recognize her," the queen continued through Jiwon. "Royal Velthani are hard to hide." Communications specialist Bo Ram Yoon spoke up. "I can monitor Velthani transmissions. If the princess is being held somewhere, there might be records or communications about her. And I can check prisoner databases from captured Velthani facilities," added Hae-jin. Captain Lee thought for a long moment. Finally, he sighed. "Against my better judgment, we'll try to find this princess. But your Majesty," he looked at the queen, "if we do this, we need your cooperation, full intelligence sharing about Velthani military positions." The queen nodded eagerly. "Yes, find daughter, and I tell everything. Help end war that should never have started." Over the next few days, Queen Naravel shared memories of her daughter with the human crew. Through Jiwon's translations, they learned that Princess Kiravel was curious, kind, and brave. She had secretly learned human language and customs because she dreamed of a peaceful future. "She would sing human songs in the palace gardens," the queen said one evening. The other nobles thought it was strange, but she said human music had soul in it. The queen even hummed some of the melodies her daughter had loved. They were human songs, but they sounded different in the queen's wind chime voice. Dr. Tae-young noticed that when the queen talked about happy memories with her daughter, her shell grew brighter. When she worried about what might have happened, to the princess, the shell dulled again. "Emotion affects their shell color," he explained to the others. "It's like their feelings show on the outside." "Then we need to give her hope," said Dae-ho. "Real hope that we can find Princess Kiravel." The queen had been alone and hopeless for 3 years. Now, for the first time, she had allies, people who cared about her pain and wanted to help heal. Late that night, as the ship traveled through space, Queen Naravel sat looking out a window at the stars. She was thinking about her daughter somewhere out there in the darkness. Dae-ho found her there and sat nearby. Even without words, they understood each other. Both knew what it meant to care about family. Both knew what it meant to hope when hope seemed impossible. "We'll find her," Dae-ho said quietly. The queen didn't understand all the words, but she understood the promise. Her shell glowed softly in the starlight. For 3 weeks, the crew of the Taeguk Rising searched for any sign of Princess Kiravel. Communications specialist Bo Ram Yoon worked day and night, listening to captured Velthani radio messages. Intelligence Officer Hae-jin Choi studied every prisoner report from the war. Queen Naravel helped however she could. She taught them Velthani words and explained their military codes. But as days passed with no news of her daughter, the queen's shell grew duller. Her hope was fading again. "I'm picking up something strange," Bo-ram announced one morning. She had been listening to intercepted Velthani transmissions all night. They keep mentioning something called Project Silent Shell. What's that? Asked Captain Sungmin Lee. I'm not sure, but they talk about research subjects and neural modifications, and they mention a facility on Research Station Tor 83. Queen Naravel's shell immediately brightened when she heard the station name. She spoke quickly to Jiwan in Velthani language. She knows that station, Jiwan translated. It was a science facility before the war. They studied brain functions there. Why would they need a brain research station during a war? Wondered Hyejin. The queen spoke again, her voice worried. Through Jiwan, she explained that the military faction had been trying to create perfect soldiers. Fighters who wouldn't question orders or feel fear. They were experimenting on their own people? Asked Dr. Tae Young-han, horrified. The queen says some scientists refused to help with the research, Jiwan translated. Those scientists disappeared. Boram played more of the intercepted messages. One phrase kept appearing over and over. The hybrid subject shows promise. Hybrid? Captain Lee looked concerned. Are they mixing human and Velthani somehow? Queen Naravel listened carefully to the recordings. When she heard certain words, her eyes grew wide with fear. She spoke urgently to Jiwan. She says, hybrid doesn't mean mixing species, Jiwan translated. It means mixing a warrior's strength with a noble's intelligence. They're trying to take royal Velthani and turn them into super soldiers, and they would need a royal test subject for that, Hyejin said quietly. Everyone looked at the queen. Her shell had turned almost gray with fear. If her daughter was alive, she might be the perfect test subject for this horrible experiment. We have to get to that research station, Daeho said. It's behind enemy lines, Captain Lee warned. Deep in Velthani space. If we're caught, it means war crimes trials for helping an enemy royal. Sir, said Lieutenant Jin Woo Kang, who had been quiet until now. Request permission to lead a small stealth mission to investigate. Jin Woo was the ship's best infiltration specialist. If anyone could sneak into a Velthani research station, it was him. Captain Lee thought for a long moment. He looked at Queen Naravel, sitting quietly but clearly terrified for her daughter. Then he looked at his crew, all of whom wanted to help. Permission. Granted, he said finally, but small team only, and if things go wrong, you abort the mission immediately. Jinwoo selected his team carefully. Private Gitae Seo for technical support, Corporal Min Soo-jo for communications, and Daeho. Because the sergeant had started this whole rescue mission, they took a small, fast ship that could avoid Velthani sensors. The journey to Research Station, Tor 83, took 2 days. When they arrived, the station looked dark and mostly empty. Only minimal life signs, reported Min-soo. Maybe 20 beings total. The station was built into a large asteroid. Most of it was underground, connected by tunnels, carved into the rock. They found an old maintenance entrance that wasn't guarded. Inside, the station felt wrong. The hallways were too quiet, and the air smelled like chemicals and fear. Emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls. This way, Jinwoo whispered, following his scanner toward the life signs. They passed laboratories full of strange equipment, tanks filled with colored liquid, machines with wires and sensors. It all looked like something from a nightmare. In one room, they found computers, still displaying research data. Gitae quickly copied the files while the others kept watch. Look at this, Gitae whispered, showing them the screen. Neural suppressor experiments. They're trying to remove emotions from test subjects. The files showed brain scans and treatment, records. Most of the test subjects had died. Those who survived were described as emotionally null and unresponsive to normal stimuli. They went deeper into the station. At the very bottom level, they found the holding cells. Most were empty, but active scanners showed one cell still had power. Jinwoo led them down a long corridor. At the end, behind thick energy barriers, they found her. Princess Kiravel lay on a simple cot, staring at nothing. Her shell, which should have been bright and colorful like her mother described, was a dull, sick gray. Wires connected her head. To monitoring machines. Is she alive? Whispered Daeho. Barely, said Jinwoo, checking his scanner. But look at these neural readings. They've done something terrible to her brain. The princess was thin and weak. She didn't react when they appeared at her cell. She didn't even seem to see them. The neural suppressors had left her trapped in her own mind. But then something strange happened. In the cell's corner sat a small communication device, probably left by a careless guard. It was playing very quietly, and the sound it made was familiar. It was human music. An old Earth song about hope and coming home. When the music played, Princess Kira Vel's shell showed the tiniest flicker of color. Just for a second, but it was there. She can still hear it, Daeho realized. The music. Part of her is still there. "We need to get her out of here," said Jinwoo. Getting into the cell was easy for Gitai. But when they tried to move the princess, alarms began sounding throughout the station. "Company," Minsu warned. Veltani soldiers came running down the corridor. But these weren't normal soldiers. They moved strangely, like machines. Their eyes were empty and emotionless. The other test subjects, Gitai realized, they turned their own people into robot soldiers. The fight was brutal. The modified Veltani felt no pain and showed no fear. They just kept attacking until they were stopped permanently. Gitai got hurt badly, but the others managed to carry both him and the princess to their ship. As they escaped, Jinwoo looked back at the research station. What kind of people experiment on their own children? "The kind we're fighting against," Daeho answered, holding the unconscious princess carefully. Princess Kira Vel was alive, but the bright music-loving girl her mother had described seemed gone forever. Her mind was locked away by the cruel experiments. During the flight back to the Taeguk Rising, she stared at nothing and responded to nothing. Except when that same human song played on their communication system. Then, for just a moment, tiny colors would flicker across her gray shell. "There's still someone in there," Daeho said quietly. "We just have to find a way to bring her back." They had found the princess, but saving her would be an even greater challenge. The question now was whether human determination and Velthani, love could heal what hatred and war had broken. Behind them, Research Station Tor 83 grew smaller in the distance, its dark secrets finally exposed. But the real work of rescue was just beginning. Queen Naravel's shell turned completely gray when she saw her daughter. Princess Kiravel lay in the medical bay, alive but empty. The bright, curious girl the queen remembered was gone, replaced by someone who stared at nothing and responded to nothing. "What did they do to her?" the queen whispered through Jiwon's translator. Dr. Tae Young Han showed her the brain scans. They used neural suppressors to shut down parts of her mind, the areas that control emotion, memory, and personality. The queen touched her daughter's face gently. The princess didn't react. Her shell stayed the same dull gray color. "In our culture," the queen said sadly, "this is worse than death. Her spirit is trapped inside, but it cannot reach the surface." For 3 days, the princess just lay there. She would eat if someone put food in her mouth. She would drink if someone gave her water. But she showed no signs of recognition or awareness. The queen sat beside her daughter's bed constantly. She talked to the princess in their own language, sang old lullabies and told stories about when Kiravel was small. Nothing worked. "Maybe she's gone," said Captain Sungmin Lee quietly. "Maybe we rescued her body, but her mind is lost forever." But Daeho remembered something from the research station. "The music," he said. She reacted to that human song. Just a little, but there was a reaction. "You think music could help?" asked Dr. Tae-young. "Her mother said she loved human music before the war. Maybe it's still connected to who she used to be." They started playing different human songs in the medical bay. Most got no response, but certain melodies made the princess's shell flicker with tiny traces of color. Never for long, but it was something. Engineer Sujin Yu noticed the pattern first. "It's not random," she told the others. "Specific songs get specific color responses, like her brain is trying to remember something." Jiwon worked with the queen to understand what different shell colors meant in Velthani communication. Bright colors meant happiness and recognition. Darker colors meant sadness or fear. The tiny flickers they saw were like whispers of emotion trying to break through. We need to map which songs trigger which memories, suggested Intelligence Officer Hee-Jin Choi. They created a careful schedule, different music at different times while monitoring the princess's brain activity and shell responses. Slowly, they began to see patterns. Songs about home made her shell show traces of blue, songs about family brought hints of purple, and songs about hope created tiny flashes of gold. "She's still in there," the Queen said with growing excitement. "My daughter is still fighting to come back." Dr. Tae-young studied human cases of severe trauma. He found research about using familiar stimuli to help damaged minds heal. But this was different. No human had ever tried to heal a Velthani brain before. "I want to try something experimental," he told Captain Lee. "But it's risky. We could make her condition worse." "What do you need?" the captain asked. "Permission to try human neural therapy techniques on an alien brain, and access to the ship's medical nanobots. It was a huge risk. The nanobots were designed for human biology. Using them on a Velthani could kill her." Queen Naravel listened to the explanation through Jiwon's translator. When she understood the danger, she looked at her empty-eyed daughter for a long time. "She would want us to try," the Queen said finally. "My daughter was always brave. She would take this risk for a chance to live again." They prepared carefully. Dr. Tae-young modified the nanobots to work with Velthani brain chemistry. Soo-jin programmed them with data about Princess Kiravel's specific neural patterns from before the experiments. The treatment took 12 hours. The nanobots worked to repair damaged neural pathways, while specific music played to stimulate memory centers. The Queen held her daughter's hand the entire time. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the princess's brain activity began to change. The flat, emotionless patterns started showing small spikes of activity. "Something's happening," Dr. Tae-young reported. "Her brain is responding." On the 6th hour, Princess Kiravel's shell showed the first real color it had displayed since her rescue, a soft blue that lasted for almost a minute. "That's recognition," the Queen said excitedly. "She knows I'm here." By hour 10, the princess began moving slightly. Not much, just small movements of her fingers and eyes, but it was purposeful movement, not the empty staring they had seen before. On hour 12, as a gentle human lullaby played in the background, Princess Kiravel's eyes focused on her mother's face. The Queen held her breath. The princess's mouth moved slightly, like she was trying to speak. No sound came out, but her shell began to brighten with soft purple light. "She's trying to say something," Jiwon whispered. Dr. Tae-young checked his instruments. "Her speech centers are coming back online. Give her time." For another hour, they waited. The Queen continued talking softly to her daughter, and the princess's eyes followed her mother's voice. Finally, Princess Kiravel's lips moved again. This time, a sound came out. Quiet and scratchy, but definitely words. "Music," she whispered in perfect human language. "I hear music." The Queen's shell blazed with brilliant violet light. After 3 years of grief and fear, her daughter had spoken. "Yes," the Queen said through her tears. "There's music, my precious one. Beautiful music." The princess looked confused, like someone waking up from a long dream. Her shell was still mostly gray, but traces of natural color were starting to show through. "Where?" she began, then stopped. Her voice was weak from not speaking for so long. "You're safe," Daeho said gently. "You're with your mother." Princess Kiravel turned toward the sound of his voice. When she saw the human, her eyes showed the first real expression they had seen. "Curiosity?" "Human?" she asked in their language. "Yes," Daeho smiled. "We're friends." The princess looked back at her mother, then at the other humans in the room. Her shell brightened a little more. "Mom," she said, using the human word instead of the Velthani one. Queen Naravel almost collapsed with joy. Her daughter was coming back. Slowly, damaged, but definitely returning. "Yes, my daughter, I'm here. I'm here." It was just the beginning of a long healing process. The princess still had trouble remembering things and speaking clearly, but the spark of life was back in her eyes. That night, as Princess Kiravel slept peacefully for the first time in years, Queen Naravel found Deho on the ship's observation deck. "Thank you," she said in careful human language. "You gave me back my daughter." "We all did it together," Deho replied. "Human and Velthani working as one." The Queen looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a war was still going on. But here on this ship, two species had proven that healing was possible. "When my daughter is stronger," the Queen said, "I will tell you everything you need to know to end this war. It's time for peace." Princess Kiravel was still fragile, still healing, but she was alive and aware and loved. Sometimes that was enough to start rebuilding a broken world. 2 weeks had passed since Princess Kiravel first spoke. Each day brought small improvements. She could sit up now, and her shell showed more natural color. But she was still weak and confused about many things. The princess remembered fragments of her old life. She knew her mother's voice and face. She remembered loving human music, but much of her personality was still locked away by the damage from the experiments. Dr. Tae-young worked with her every day, using music and familiar objects to help rebuild her memories. The Queen never left her daughter's side, patiently helping her relearn simple things like eating and walking. "Progress is slow," the doctor told Captain Sung-Min Lee, "but she's definitely getting better. Her brain is healing itself little by little." The breakthrough came on a quiet morning. Princess Kiravel was sitting in the medical bay, listening to a human song about coming home. Suddenly, she started humming along with the melody. "I know this song," she said clearly. Her voice was stronger now. "I used to sing it in the gardens." Queen Naravel's shell brightened with joy. This was the first time her daughter had remembered something specific from before the experiments. "Yes," the Queen said excitedly. "You loved that song. You said it reminded you of hope." The princess looked at her mother with clearer eyes. "You used to worry that I listened to too much human music." "I was wrong to worry," the Queen admitted. "That music is bringing you back to me." Over the next few days, more memories returned. Princess Kiravel remembered studying human language and culture. She remembered her dream of being a peace ambassador between the species. And she remembered, "The night soldiers came to take her away. They hurt you because of me," she said sadly to her mother. "Because you wouldn't tell them where the peace treaty documents were hidden." "No, my daughter. They hurt us because they chose hatred over understanding. That was their choice, not ours." The princess's shell was showing more color now, though. It was still pale compared to what it should be. The natural iridescent quality her mother had described was starting to return in small patches. Captain Lee made an important decision. "We're going to Earth," he announced. "Princess Kiravel needs to see something that represents the best of humanity, not just our warships." The journey to Earth took a week. During that time, the princess grew stronger. She started walking around the ship, talking with the crew members and asking questions about everything. "Why did you help us?" she asked Deho one day. "We were supposed to be enemies." "Because your mother needed help," Deho replied simply. "And because helping others is what makes us human." The princess thought about this for a long time. "In the experiments, they tried to remove my ability to care about others. They said it made me weak." "Caring makes you strong," Deho told her. "It's what gives life meaning." When Earth appeared on the viewing screens, Princess Kiravel stared in wonder. The blue and green planet looked peaceful and beautiful from space. "It's not what